This is TNN, celebrating 5 great years.
Diamond B Sports presents the American Sports Cavalcade. A panorama of speed, color, drama, and excitement. The American Sports Cavalcade.
The American Southwest, particularly the state of Arizona, a paradise for the desert lover. Millions of acres of flora and fauna unduplicated anywhere on the continent. Craggy mountain peaks, deep canyons, and of course the comforts of the oasis known as Phoenix. 10 miles east of Phoenix, on the way to Tucson, there's an oasis of another kind, Firebird International Raceway Park. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Evans. We've come to Firebird today to bring you coverage of the National Hot Rod Association's 3rd annual Castrol GTX Fall Nationals. We'll be showing you the ground-shaking, nitro-burning funny cars, bullet-fast, supercharged, top alcohol dragsters, and the always fascinating competition Eliminator. Well, every drag racing fan knows the big story in funny car racing this year, superstar Kenny Bernstein. He has already clinched his 3rd consecutive Winston World Championship and has won 7 races this season. That ties a decade-old record held by Don the Snake Prudhomme. But in the last month, Bernstein seems to be losing a little of that competitive edge. At Maple Grove, Pennsylvania, 3 weeks ago, defeated by Mark Oswald. Two weeks ago, Dallas, Texas, Ed the Ace McCullough dropped the king in the semifinals and took his elapsed time record at 5.36 seconds. Same weekend, Mike Dunn, he took Bernstein's speed record, the first ever 280-mile-an-hour blast in a funny car. John Force, also closing in, running competitive numbers with Bernstein. Well, to get the inside story, I went to, not the drivers, but the men who build the power, the crew chiefs. Austin, what has happened in the last year to allow cars like the one you prepare to get closer to Kenny Bernstein?
Well, it's just we're learning some things he found out a long time ago by running high-flow billet cylinder heads and a tremendous amount of fuel volume in the system.
You feel you're there now?
Well, I feel we're awful close. I think those guys are having a little bit of problems lately. Has allowed us to make it a little easier on us to catch up, but I think we're very close.
Bernie Federley, the 5:36 at Dallas, does that indicate that you've caught Kenny Bernstein performance-wise?
Well, I'm not really sure of that. It's one weekend they're under ideal conditions, and they've been able to run well on lesser tracks. And so I think that if we can run well the next 2 events, then maybe we have something going. Right now, it's just sort of theory. We think we have something going, but it's real hard to tell at this point. The facility is so good over there. It's just the racing surfaces just conforms to our combination. The air was very good, and it's just one of those things that we kind of hit it right. But if we can do it again, then we'll know we got it.
Leonard, what we've seen in the last month would indicate there's 4 cars, including yours, that can run with Kenny Bernstein. Do you feel confident now that you've caught up?
Yeah, I think most of the field is catching up. The top 8 or 9 cars is starting to creep up on him pretty well now.
What took him a year and a half to do it?
I think it was most of the clutch thing. We're learning how not to gear the car so high and get it off the starting line and how to make it work, and the ETs are coming back.
Dale, there's some, including your fellow crew chiefs, who feel the competition is catching up to you. There's others who say Kenny's clinched the title and you're just experimenting. Which is it?
Well, it's a little of both. The competition has stepped up pretty good. There's some guys I'm noticing that their car is reacting a lot like ours has been for the last couple of years, and they're moving in on us, but we are in a period now of experimentation. 2 weeks ago we clinched the title, and we've got quite a few different things on the car now that we're playing with this year to get ready for next year.
Some surprises for them in '88?
Oh, I think if the experiments work out, there may be some surprises for him this year yet.
Well, apparently those experiments need some more work. Bernstein was defeated earlier today in round 1 action. That's Bernstein in the far lane. In the near lane was Ed the Ace McCullough. McCullough crossed the finish line strike first, 5.58 seconds to Bernstein's 5.76. For more on today's action, let's go to Paul Page.
Well, Steve, as you mentioned, we're also doing Top Alcohol Dragster along with Funny Car and, of course, Competition Eliminator. Earlier in the qualifying for Funny Car, Mark Oswald, the #1 qualifier with a 5:49. In Competition Eliminator, this man, David Nickens, in his Sea Econo Altered, was the low qualifier. We'll talk about the indexes a little bit later. And in Top Alcohol Dragster, Bruce McDowell, low qualifier with a 6:33. Well, now let's take the opportunity to look at the Top Alcohol Dragster. In this case, it's Denny Lucas's machine, and as you can see, it looks a great deal like any Top Fuel Dragster, even to the engine components, except, of course, it runs on alcohol. And because it does, there's a lot of changes internally here, including a much higher compression ratio. Back in the gearbox department, we're running 3 speeds here rather than 2, as you would see on the Top Fuel Dragster. Additionally, they have a weight limit on these machines based on the horsepower that they're actually producing. The good news is that if you run one of these, the alcohol fuel is a whole lot cheaper than running the nitro.
Okay, thank you, Paul. A capacity crowd on hand here in Phoenix, Arizona. A hot, dry, beautiful day, and everybody is up and ready for the second round of the Nitro Funny Cars. And in the first of 4 battles, we'll be seeing this man, Ed the Ace McCullough. As we said earlier, the new world record holder at 5.36 seconds. He will be in the near lane with his Oldsmobile-bodied funny car, smoking the tires on what they call the burnout. His competition will be a young man from Ypsilanti, Michigan, 26-year-old Scott Coletta. Scott Coletta, the son of the veteran Connie Coletta, who still campaigns in the Top Fuel Wars, still kind of learning the sport. Paul has not won his first race, but hopes to soon.
Young man has certainly showed a great deal of aggression, though, in his learning cycle. Very hot here today, Steve. Temperatures forecast to go into the mid-90s. Already it's 90 degrees very early on in the day.
Ed the Ace McCullough operates out of Hemet, California, part of the Larry Minor racing team. He's facing off with Scott Coletta from Michigan, and Scott dispatched Graham Cowan in the Aussie Raider in round 1, sent Graham back to Sydney, Australia. So Scott Coletta in the far lane, absolutely beautiful car. It's amazing, Paul, considering the travel, the stress, the fires, the explosion, how they keep these cars looking so neat.
Well, of course, they spend a great deal of time working not only internally on the machines, making sure that they're tip-top, but additionally just making sure that they're well presented and beautiful when they come to the line.
Both drivers using the handbrake in the cockpit to inch forward, very carefully positioning their front wheels in those electronic beams. And away first is Scott Coletta. A tremendous hole shot by Coletta. He gets sideways and still wins it. Ed McCullough, for some reason, was 0.3 of a second late off of the starting line. Scott Coletta, the upset of this season, Paul.
Well, you know, really, that was a gimme because Coletta had problems, as you watch here. There's Coletta on the right side. He moves first by, as you said, a full 0.3 of a second. Finally, McCullough figures it out and charges on. Now watch, you'll see the wheels start to spin on Scotty's car. Had it not been for the late leave, he might have been grabbed.
Well, something strange had to have happened to McCullough on the starting line for this to happen. His 5.78 is defeated by a 6.07. That's more than just a hole shot. That is just positively incredible.
Scott, my friend, one whale of a hole shot.
I hope so. I needed it. And, you know, he's tough, and I was like 4 attempts slower than him the round before, and I knew he had to go for it, and I was smoking the tires, and it did it again. He must have done the same. I don't know. Just tried my hardest.
Well, McCullough was in no mood to explain to us what happened. He headed straight back for his trailer. Well, here, standing on the throttle, unleashing 3,000 horsepower, Raymond Beadle in the Blue Max Pontiac-powered AA fuel funny car. Opens the roof hatch for a little ventilation. Dale Foley in the over-the-hill gang car, cool and comfortable until that body goes down. There's no side windows in these cars like there were in the old days. And, Paul, that looks like a beautiful new car, doesn't it? Well, the body is, but underneath it is a veteran chassis, over 7 years old, probably the oldest and still competitive funny car in the sport.
Well, Steve, when you're talking about temperatures here in the Arizona desert, as we go into the 90s, it's going to have a definite effect on these men. Dale Poldy, Granada Hills, California, beat Mike Dunn to come into this round and face Raymond Beadle from Dallas, Texas, the former world champion in funny car.
In fact, 3-time world champion. Now, Raymond Beadle is idling forward. He completed the long, smoky, wet burnout. Now he'll do what they call a dry burnout. And his crew will be watching those huge rear slick tires as Raymond kind of duplicates the start of the race. Now, it hooked up very hard, Paul. He'll probably come back and just stage the car, not do another dry. Had it twisted the tires, and Dale Foley may do the same thing here. They would come back and do that again, only an abbreviated version to make sure the car is going to stick.
The whole trick to find out exactly how much power, how much throttle you can give the car as you come roaring off the line. Remember, there's a great deal more power here than they can use in many instances.
That's right. That's why they use a multiple disc clutch that is adjustable and can slide some of that power until they get halfway or so down the racetrack where the clutch locks up completely. So it'll be Beetle in the near lane, Dale Pulley in the far lane. Pulley competed on the national circuit for a number of years. The last couple of seasons has stayed pretty close to home. He's from California. Arizona's about as far away as he goes. And it's a beautiful start by both drivers, but Pulley veers to the left and may have grazed the wall. Raymond Beetle advances to the semifinals at 583, 218 miles per hour. Dale Pulley shuts it down. Did he get a little white paint on the side of that car? I think so.
Well, more than a little white paint, I would think, Steve. As we watch the car over in the far lane, he drifts into that gray stuff, kicks up a little dust, and then kicks it right against the wall. But very, very lightly, just a nice little soft kiss, and back onto the drag strip.
And back at the head of the staging lanes, John Force, his crew chief Austin Coyle, waiting for the safety crews to check out the racetrack, as is their opponent, Mark Oswald and his crew. We'll be back with more funny car racing right after this.
We're back at the Castrol GTX Fall Nationals from Phoenix Firebird Raceway. Round 2, funny car continues as John Force powers the engine up, ready to face Mark Oswald.
And Force always does the longest burnouts. He says it just gets him pumped up emotionally. Well, his opponent will be plenty pumped up. The low qualifier, Mark Oswald. The body not yet down on that car, but everything appears to be okay as the brilliant red Thunderbird silhouette is now latched down onto that tube chassis. We will have a side-by-side drag race. And down at the far end of the racetrack with the Rattlesnakes and the Jackrabbits is Paul Page, who right now has with him Raymond Beetle, the driver of the Blue Max.
Ray, a 583 218 has pulled back pedals, but you're not clean either, are you?
No, we blew a blower belt just for the light, so the car was running pretty good till we blew that blower belt, and I was afraid he was going to sneak by me there on the end, but we'll take them any way we can get them today on these racetracks.
No sneaking done here today with you?
No, well, when you have to wait till the race is over, but I mean, like I said, we've been off a little all weekend. We're getting a little better, so maybe if we have enough time, we'll be all right.
Keep tuning it up for that final round.
We'll try.
All right.
Thank you.
A pure racer, Raymond Beetle. Drag racing, NASCAR racing, sprint car racing. His Blue Max team does it all. Well, here is Mark Oswald, the Candies and Hughes team, the car based out of Houma, Louisiana. Mark Oswald, a native of the Cincinnati, Ohio area.
Oswald spent some of his time in the top fuel dragsters, but of course he really seems to like these funny cars, and he does incredibly well in them.
He defeated Bruce Larson of Pennsylvania in round number 1 to get this far, and it was John Force, much to the crowd's displeasure, dispatching favorite Johnny West, local favorite I should say, and Roland Leon's Hawaiian car.
John Force, a driver who tremendously enjoys his drag racing, has a wonderful, almost ribald sense of humor, really likes to play it constantly, and is a delight to be around.
And he may know this racetrack better than any of the other pros, Paul. This is kind of his home track. He match races here a lot during the season. And that can be an advantage anytime you're on your home court. Away first is John Force, a nice hole shot, but immediately that is covered up by Mark Oswald. What power in the red car. 5.50 seconds, 263 miles per hour. John Force was in it till half track, 5.76 his elapsed time.
Well, despite the fact that John Force came off the line ahead of Mark Oswald, it was really Oswald's tremendous skill and power that brought that car to the victory. Now here is Billy Meyer as he is ready to face Don Prudhomme.
Don Prudhomme on the comeback trail. This is his first year back after a full year of retirement. Already has won one race, the Gator Nationals down in Florida last March. Now, Billy Meyer also has one race victory this year in the beautiful yellow, white, and blue car in the far lane. All right, let's again go down to the far end with Paul Page.
Here's Mark Oswald. Good run on a hot day of 550 with a 263.
Yeah, we're happy with the way the Thunderbird's running in this heat, you know. Last year we had quite a bit of problem with the racetrack. This year, everything seems good.
Well, they've repaved this racetrack from starting line to finish line, and you're right, Mark, it is good. There's Don Prudhomme. He'll be in the near lane. Billy Meyer in the far lane from Waco, Texas. And there's another one of those dry burnouts. The racers call them dry hops. Billy Meyer does it also, both of them testing that starting line surface. Don Prudhomme, the only four-time funny car world champion the sport has ever known. Billy Meyer, championship driver and also racetrack owner. He built the beautiful Texas Motorplex just outside of Dallas.
Billy Meyer backs up that Olds Forenza, ready to take on Don Prudhomme. It'll be Meyer in the far lane, Prudhomme in the near lane.
Meyer inside the car, intently watching the water temperature gauge. He wants that car to get somewhere between about 160 and 180 degrees.
And as they come up to stage, we get a good view of the Christmas tree. Of course, the pros only use the bottom yellow light, 0.4 of a second warning. Later in the day, when we see Competition Eliminator, we'll see the full tree in use in staggered starts. Right now, though, Prudhomme and Meyer, funny car.
And you can bet with professional drivers like this, they react as soon as they see that yellow. A good reaction time is about 5 or 6 hundredths away from the light. And good reaction times for both drivers. A dead even start. Billy Meyer has problems. Don the Snake Prudhomme's crew says, all right, fight. Snake at a 5.56, 265-mile-per-hour victory. Billy Meyer slows to a 6.54. Well, let's look at the pairings for the semifinals of Funny Car, and also as seen in the Superstition Mountains. Who knows? Maybe that's where the last Dutchman gold bind is. Don the Snake Prudhomme will match up with Mark Oswald. Oswald will have the lane choice. The other half of the semifinals will find Raymond Beadle with lane choice over young Scott Colletta, who had that tremendous hole shot over Ed the Ace McCullough. Paul?
Down a 5.56 with a 2.65. Will that do it?
Well, it's a little behind, you know. Mark Oswald just run 5.50, so he's got us by a little bit, so we're going to have to go back and sharpen the thing up a little bit and hope that left-hand lane will hold it.
Should cool down now the rest of the day. Can you tune up to it?
I think so. I think that'll work in our favor. It's going to be a good race, though.
Your kind of experience pays off here.
Well, let's hope so. It's been a lot of fun so far.
All righty, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it's always a lot of fun when you're winning, as Don Prudhomme is so far today. One young man maybe not having such a good time is back in the pit area. Scott Colletta and his crew trying to find some more performance in their funny car. They're at least 0.2 of a second off of their next opponent, Raymond Beadle. Now, they're paying some attention to the rear end in that car, the differential. They may have installed a lower gear ratio to try to get that funny car to squirt a little harder right off the starting line. It's time now for top alcohol dragster action. That is Dennis Lucas, and he runs a big Hemi engine. This man, his opponent, Gary Christensen, Paul, uses a Chevrolet big block. He's from Mission Hills, California.
And of course, like the top fuelers, these cackle, they're loud, but they're extremely high revving machines, and they need those high revs, especially at the starting line, unlike the top fuel dragster. They'll pick the revs up and then dump the clutch to leave the line, having power in advance.
Well, torque multiplication is what it's all about with these cars. That's why they use a 3-speed instead of a 2 to have that lower gear initially. Now, this man, Gary Christensen, he's really got his hands full. The big block Chevys have not been matching numbers with the Hemis on this racetrack at a little bit of altitude. He's also up against a prime candidate to be world champion, Denny Lucas. Lucas with the huge 500 cubic inch hemispherical racing engine. And many times over the years, we've shown you their big brothers, the top fuel dragsters, and visually, there's a lot of similarities. But the big difference really is what's in the tank, and it's methanol. They call it alcohol in drag racing. And it's not a petroleum-based fuel. It is a distilled fuel from grain, corn, wheat, whatever. And it's only $1.72 a gallon, and they burn about 2 gallons of it. So there's a big economic factor there. But also, you see these guys doing the dry burnouts, much like the Nitro Funny cars. And also, they're in no big hurry because the alcohol fuel runs so very cool, Paul. In fact, it takes a little extra time to get the engine to temperature.
I think that's a very important point with any alcohol-powered machine. The alcohol, as it washes into the cylinder, will wash down the walls and immediately cool the cylinder. So they do need to run the machine longer to bring it up to a full operating temperature. So it's Denny Lucas in the near lane. In the far lane, Gary Christensen, as now the revs begin to come up and they both stage.
That's right, and as those revs come up, you can see the car's torque over. There's the start, front wheels off the ground for Christensen. He has got a lead over Denny Lucas. The underdog, Christensen, no. Denny Lucas comes from behind. The margin of victory, 100th of a second. 6:41 for Denny Lucas, a 6:42 for Gary Christensen. Let's take another look at exactly where on the racetrack Denny Lucas made his charge. You can see right here, he's about a half a car length behind. The blue car in the near lane, that's Lucas. Ever so slowly, he creeps up. You can bet Gary Christensen sees him now and goes, oh, no. That's right. It is Denny Lucas from behind. And you can bet he's darn glad to get that helmet off. It's hot here today in Phoenix.
Denny win with a 6:41.
Well, that's good for today.
Looks like everything's clean. You should be set to go.
For a change. We've been having a lot of problems the last couple of weeks.
Exactly.
But no, it was safe and good. We really appreciate it.
Congratulations, Denny.
Thank you very much. We just hope we can go on from here now.
Hot sun, is it affecting?
Yes, really is.
What way?
Oh, it makes you have to run a lot leaner than what you like to run, and these cars don't like to be lean. They like to have a lot of fuel.
All right.
You know, so we'll see if we can get her back for the next round.
And all he'll probably do for the next round is change the oil and the spark plugs, if even that. But not so with a nitro funny car. Take a look at the action back in the pits as Raymond Beadle and his crew, a crew of 5 people, get ready to race Scott Coletta. We'll be back.
We're back at the NHRA Castrol GTX Fall Nationals from Firebird Raceway in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm Paul Page with Steve Evans and a massive crowd. Over 41,000 people have enjoyed drag racing over the past several days here in Phoenix. And here is Alan Johnson in top alcohol dragster ready to face Bill Neal.
Now, Bill Neal uses the 500 cubic inch Keith Black aluminum racing engine. It's a Hemi head engine. You can tell because the spark plug wires there go right down through the center of the valve cover, and the spark plug is positioned in the center of a round combustion chamber.
I think everybody is aware that drag racing is a sport that is constantly at the cutting edge of technology. New developments up and down the drag strip, not only with the cars, but with the timing systems and all of the support equipment. Earlier, Steve took a look at some new high technology.
There have been so many advancements in race cars and race tracks in this drag racing sport. It's really quite amazing. But one area hasn't changed in 30 years until just recently, and that's the time slip booth. Well, this is it. It's all you need down at the end of the racetrack. And after you complete your run, a nice lady, usually on the phone, writing down the times, and would give you a slip of paper or a little card. Not anymore, not on the national event circuit anyway, because these printers are connected to the CompuLink computers in the tower. Now let's take a look at what you get. Instead of the usual Wednesday night time slip like this one right here, now you get something like this. And it's not only the information on your run, but also that of your opponent. On the top, you can see there's the reaction time. Then there's the 60-foot time, which is very useful for tuning the automobile. Doesn't have anything to do with winning or losing. There's the quarter-mile elapsed time and also the speed. You know the date, you know the time of the day, not only on your effort, but also that of your opponent. And it has everything but the humidity and the temperature, and that's probably coming. You may someday even get your horoscope on the back of one of these things.
Well, Steve, if it reads like mine, I'm not sure everybody would want theirs. Here is Alan Johnson, ready to stage in top alcohol dragster. He qualified fourth, the man from Santa Maria, California, Rodec-powered machine, facing Bill Neal from El Cajon, the 8th qualifier, and his Keith Black powered top alcohol dragster.
You know, at one time, Paul, when this class was brand new, a lot of the dragsters were old top fuel cars that had been retired and the alcohol racers were buying them. Not so much anymore. Most of these machines are custom built for the class. The engine likes to sit in a little different place on alcohol than it does on nitro. Now listen to those RPMs come up as they inch forward. Top alcohol dragster racing, some of the closest in NHRA championship drag racing. A great start by both drivers. They are side by side. This is a drag race. And it is Alan Johnson, the red car in the near lane. Identical elapsed times. 6.47 seconds for both drivers. The computer calls it the red car, Alan Johnson. Let's take another look. Now, further analysis of the reaction time shows that the car in the near lane left first by 6/1000th of a second. Does it sound like much? Well, it was the difference in this drag race. Side by side, it is Johnson in the red car, Neal in the blue car. You know that with a peripheral vision, both drivers can see each other all the way down the racetrack. Just a sensational race and so typical of the action you'll see in this category. Wow, there it is. Alan Johnson wins it.
Good little run with 647. You happy with that?
Oh, well, it sounds a little bit down, but I think it's a little weak. We were trying to play a little safe. We burned it up last night, so wanted to start a little conservative.
Particularly hot day. Is it getting to you?
Nah, I don't think so. We're going to make it.
Go out and give him hell.
Thanks.
Well, he looks pretty comfortable, and there's one of the reasons why. He's wearing shorts under that 5-layer fire suit. It's time now to pit two of the very best in this category one-on-one. The bright red car, that is Mike Troxel. He won this year's U.S. Nationals at Indianapolis, Indiana. He is up against the quickest man in the category here in Phoenix, Bruce McDowell, the #1 qualifier. And Bruce using some of these streamlining techniques developed by Big Daddy Don Garland. The canopy over the cockpit, the spoon-like, almost snakehead nose, and the very small front wheels.
Mike Troxel, the more traditional configuration of the dragster. Here's Bruce McDowell, the #1 qualifier from Lakewood, Colorado. He faces Mike Troxel from Bonita, California, the #5 qualifier. Both machines are powered by Keith Black engines.
You know, driving is always a very important part of any racing success. But in this class, it really takes some driving because the competition is so close. As we saw in our last heat, they can be almost dead heats. So the guy that can get off that starting line first always has a better chance of winning it, Paul.
Top alcohol dragster, Dragster in the far lane, McDowell in the near lane. Revs will come up as they stage. They get that advanced power. Waiting for the yellow light, then the green light, and they're on their way. Now McDowell inches up to the line. Red light on the far side. Dragster gets away first, but first in this case is way too early. He shows a red light. The race goes to McDowell with a 6:43, 214 miles an hour. The red foul light burns on the other side for Mike Dragster.
I believe, Paul, that was just a calculated risk by Dragster. He gambled and lost. Look at this beautiful car. And it is driven by none other than Eldon P. Slick. Now, I've never asked him if that's his real name, but I kind of doubt it. His opponent, now I'm sure that's his real name. That is Bill Barney, a prime candidate also for the World Championship in the category. Now, you see Barney just annihilating those tires. If you were to go out there right now and put your hand on them, well, you'd come back with some blisters. Now, Eldon P. Slick in the near lane, he drives for a bunch of guys out of San Diego, California called the Over the Belt Gang. They do like to have a lot of fun, and I think that includes naming their driver Eldon P. Slick. Bill Barney is from the gold country of Northern California, just outside of Sacramento, Roseville, California. Eldon P. Slick from down around San Diego. Even wears sunglasses to continue the disguise, I think, Paul, the mystery man of top alcohol dragster racing.
Well, you know, Steve, in top alcohol dragster, we're accustomed to engine names like Keith Black and Rodek. But here, in one car, that of Slick's, we're looking at a JP1, and Barney's carrying an Arius.
Well, JP1, the JP stands for Joe Paisano. That is the latest in the aftermarket aluminum engines, much like the Hemi Chrysler. The Arius, well, that resembles a Chevrolet, but with hemispherical heads on it. So you've got a drastically different technology involved here, but a good start by both drivers. As they do the half track, it's Barney ahead, but Eldon P. Slick comes from behind. Eldon wins it at 6:46 to a losing, but so close, 6:49. And both drivers exactly the same speed, 213 miles per hour. And a beautiful start, Paul Page.
Really very nearly even, 6 1/1000ths of a second as they came off of the line.
And Slick in the near lane just had his nose tucked out in front of Bill Barney by a foot or so. Barney made a charge, actually got around him, and then it was Slick battling back across the finish line. The near lane, Eldon P. Slick, the winner.
Eldon, you pick and went up with a 6:46.
46, well, it's in the program. It's in the program. We got to pick up from that, but plenty stout competition. Bill Barney's probably one of the best there is right now.
Sure running good.
We're very enthusiastic. Got a good sponsor and a good crew, and all I do is just steer it, put a monkey in it the way it runs now.
All right, thanks.
I believe it.
He is slick. He's having a lot of fun, Eldon. All right, let's take a look at the pairings for the semifinal round. I bet the Outlaws used to hide up in those rocks there. Well, anyway, it's going to be Eldon P. Slick, but Bruce McDowell, his opponent, will have the lane choice. The other half of the semifinals, that will find Denny Lucas with lane choice over Alan Johnson. Johnson could be in pretty tough right there. Stay with us. We'll be back with more action from Firebird International Raceway right after this.
We're back in Phoenix, Arizona at Firebird Raceway for the Castrol GTX Fall Nationals. And coming up next, Competition Eliminator. Earlier, Steve and I took a look at the components of this fascinating class.
Competition Eliminator is one of the most interesting categories in all of NHRA sportsman drag racing because there's such a variety of automobiles. You're liable to find anything in comp. There's 44 classes overall, and they can all run together because NHRA assigns a performance index to each class. That's what their experts and their computers say that a properly driven, tuned car should run, a particular lapse time. Some run quicker than that, some run right on it, some can't touch it, well, as it should be, depending on the quality of the automobile. Now, they can all run together also because of the electronic Christmas tree, where 2 indexes can be subtracted and the difference dialed into the tree is a handicap. Paul will explain more about that later. You'll find lots of dragsters in Competition Eliminator, and this is a very interesting one. It is John Johnston's E-Economy dragster, and it's not a Chevy V8 or a Ford. It's a Nissan overhead valve 6-cylinder engine right out of a Datsun 280ZX. Now, they've added some Weber carburetors. The rules say they have to keep the original head and cylinder block. They have to run an automatic transmission, but without a lockup converter. Now, this car can run about half a second under the index in the class, so could win the category. Paul, what have you got?
Well, Steve, this is one snazzy little roadster, one of the fun areas of Competition Eliminator. Now, this car started life as a 1924 Ford Model T. It's now a 24 Buick Roadster. It belongs to Smokey Joe Coletti from nearby Mesa, Arizona. For power, it's a very modern V6 Buick. 209 cubic inches. Now, the class restricts them to a single carburetor, but they use a lot of creativity on getting flow through the engine, and part of that is this rat's nest of exhaust pipes that helps scavenge and improve the flow all the way through the motor. Down in the front, they have to keep some resemblance of the car they're pretending to be, and so you have this nice flat front end, but it's not very good for aerodynamics. So they built this little ramp, simply help improve the flow over the front of the car. They also have a good sense of humor. It's a V6 when they could have had a V8. And this race car, like every other race car we've ever known, is powered by money. Now, another nice thing about Competition Eliminator is that it's a category where you can find a lot of very familiar appearing cars. Steve?
Old Pro Stock cars never die. They just take on a new lease in life in Competition Eliminator. And this is the beautiful red 81 Camaro, former Pro Stocker of Calmuncas from Kansas. Now, it now runs as a C altered in Comp Eliminator. It can run in any one of about 9 different classes, depending on the engine transmission combination. Today, he is running a 275 cubic inch small block Chevy with 2 4-barrel carburetors. That's a D-stroke 350. He backs it up with a Liberty 5-speed clutchless transmission. If we went to an automatic transmission, it'd be another class, a bigger motor, another class, and so on throughout Competition Eliminator. So for more on how these cars actually get off the starting line under the handicap system, here's Paul.
You know, Steve, what we're most accustomed to seeing on television in professional drag racing is called the Pro Start. It's a heads-up start where both cars leave the line at exactly the same time. In the Christmas tree, they give each driver a 0.4 of a second warning with a yellow light and then a green light, and it looks like this. But in Competition Eliminator, what we're interested in doing is matching cars of unequal power and design. So if you, for example, have your big, giant, powerful V8 boomer and you're sitting over in one lane and I'm over in the other lane with my little bitty 4-cylinder, high screaming, whining Twinkie, and we want the 2 cars to run together, then we have to decide how to equalize those 2 cars. And they do that with a handicap start. Based on the past and the potential performance of each car, they decide that I'm going to leave well ahead of when you're going to leave. So, into the Christmas tree, they build a different time ratio, and it looks something like this. I'm on the way, you're coming out behind me, and when we get to the end, hopefully, we've got a good race. Steve?
Well, of course, Paul, the cream-filled Twinkie gets a bigger head start than the just regular cake variety. Well, this is actually the D dragster of Tim Cole. Now, it runs on an index of 8.40 seconds. Tim is from Arvada, Colorado, where he's an engine builder, and he qualified 3rd in his D dragster. Now, he will be up against Frank Parks of Salt Lake City, Utah. And there you can see the beautiful A-Economy Alder. He's 39 years old, the driver of the car, Frank Parks, and he's real proud of this machine because he built it himself, Paul. He's a chassis builder by profession.
Well, it's powered by a 305 cubic inch Buick. It's really intending to be a 1923 Model T.
Now, the indexes for these 2 classes are very close together, so there'll only be a 1/10 of a second dialed into that Christmas tree. The advantage goes to the far lane, Frank Parks, and he leaves too soon. Not only did he have the advantage, he tried to take more advantage, and the tree got him. A red light. The winner will be the D dragster in the near lane, Tim Cole. He will advance to round number 4 of Competition Eliminator. A foul start means you're gone.
Well, the real trick in this category is to concentrate on your side of the tree and not be dissuaded by the other side. But as we take a look here, Frank Parks in the far lane was the one scheduled to leave first. He just jumped the light early. Immediately, the race was over for him.
That's right. The yellow light had not even gone out yet when his front wheels exited that beam, and it went right around the green light to red.
A good run, red light on the other side, and 8:12 though.
Hey, it was a good run for us. We've been going a little bit too fast for the 50 under category, the index correction. So we've been kind of trying to keep it so we can keep a little ET in the bag for the semis. We're going to have to run #1 qualifier here in the next round. So it's going to be a good race.
All right.
Looking forward to it. Thanks a lot.
Crafty racing by Tim Cole, because if you run more than a half a second under your index, the committee on site can make it even lower, taking away some of your advantage, Paul.
Continuing, Steve, with some of the wide variety of competition eliminator, the V6 powered Buick of Larry Torres from Los Angeles, an 86 Buick, 264 cubic inch engine, V6.
And Larry will meet the #1 qualifier from Houston, Texas. That is David Nickens. That is a 298 cubic inch Olds Speranza, and it is classed as a C economy altered. So the Olds is a C car, the Buick is a D car. The Buick car will leave first. Torres, the brown machine in the far lane. He will have the advantage on the lights. It'll be up to Nickens to be a little bit patient and try to just pay attention to his side of the tree. There goes Torres, a good start by both drivers. A tremendous job here. Nickens has to come from behind the tortoise and the hare, and it is the hare getting this one. David Nickens, a clear-cut victor at 8.93 seconds, 144 miles per hour.
Both drivers in this case doing exactly what was asked of them, but Nickens came across the line as the winner. In Mark Oswald's pit, they work on the machine as they prepare to face Don Verdome. More competition eliminator coming up right after this.
A record crowd is having a terrific time today at the Castrol GTX Fall Nationals in Phoenix, Arizona. Paul Page is right now with competition eliminator star David Nickens.
David Nickens in there with an 893.
Well, thank you very much. We're real pleased to be here. The Castrol GTX Oldsmobile is running real good. We've qualified #1 today, and we've got half the battle won. Now we got to win the war.
All right, good luck with it.
Thank you very much.
Well, David has won 2 wars already this year. 2 national event titles are his, gunning for a 3rd. And here is Jim Van Cleve. You talk about a loyal Ford campaigner. This is the A-Gas Mustang car, a very sophisticated race car. Jim is the sales manager for the family-owned Ford dealership in Washington State. A good racer, has a lot of victories to his credit. He's up against a tough competitor from Arvada, Colorado, Ron Neff. Now, what a contrast you have here, Paul. The spindly front wheels on the long B economy dragster, and of course the stock-bodied Mustang machine in the near lane. Leaving first is the A-Gasser, and there's a red light on the tree for Jim Van Cleve. Van Cleve left too soon. Ron Neff won it before he ever left the starting line. And that is the advantage of being last to lead. Maybe a little more pressure on you, but you give the other driver the first opportunity to red light.
Again, the whole trick here is to watch your side of the tree. Worry only about what you see as the lights come down. Jim Van Cleve in the near lane just cut the light just a fraction too early, and his race was over.
You're right. He almost got away with that one. All right, moving along in competition eliminator. Here's a good-looking dragster, kind of a different silhouette. It's the C economy dragster, Chevy V8 powered of Todd Patterson. Now, economy means you're allowed to use only one specific size 4-barrel carburetor, and you have to use a torque converter. You can't hook up some kind of fancy mechanical clutch behind an automatic transmission.
And he will face John Johnston in his E-Economy dragster from Placentia, California. He is an auto dismantler. Of course, Todd Patterson in his C-Economy dragster qualified 10th. He comes from Augusta, Kansas, and he has a big thumping 304 cubic inch V8 in there, but it apparently is not doing the job at this moment.
No, it looks like it may have lost fire. The crew is going to push it off. This could be a single run for John Johnston. In fact, it is going to be. Now, I don't think we'd had to tell anybody who would have got the advantage here. The V8 car, which is now silent, would have had to wait for John Johnston, the little Nissan 6-cylinder car. That's the machine we looked at earlier. And Johnston, Paul, you said is an auto dismantler. Isn't that what we used to call a guy who ran a wrecking yard?
Well, you got to be polite about these guys. I mean, they're on nationwide television now. There's the little Datsun powering up. It would have been a nice run to see this inline 6 run against that big V8, but he's got a nice clean run here. All he has to do it is right and careful, and he goes to the next round.
At a 9.06 second elapsed time, 143 miles per hour. Todd Patterson is out of his car. Not his day, but John Johnston gets a gift here. He'll move on in eliminations. Let's take a look at the semifinal pairings and also some more of this beautiful desert scenery. Looks like a Remington painting, almost too beautiful to be real. It'll be John Johnston, the little Nissan 6, up against Ron Neff. Neff has lane choice. He ran closer to the index than Johnston did. That's how that works. David Nickens will race Tim Cole. Tim Cole will have the lane choice in that confrontation. Paul?
John, a 906 with the little 6-cylinder Nissan. Looking good.
Thank you very much. Feels good to be here at Phoenix and being able to run with the big boys and with the Nissan.
How's that motor performing for you?
Very well, very well. I'm very happy with the performance of it. It's an oddball combination for drag
Any
racing.
special problems with it?
Cylinder block. I have a hard time with cylinder block. They're just what I call a junkyard block. I have a wrecking yard, and that's what I use out of my wrecking yard is the parts to build this engine. It's totally out of a wrecking yard.
Real junkyard dog, then.
It is really a junkyard dog.
Well, it's doing a good job for you.
Thank you.
All righty, take care.
All right.
Well, that old junkyard dog has got a pretty vicious bite. The competition is calling John Johnston one of the big guys. Well, already in the staging lanes, the cars for the funny car semis. Final adjustments being made to Mark Oswald's fuel system. We'll be back for the tire smokers right after this.
This is Paul Page with Steve Evans, and we're at Firebird Raceway in Phoenix, Arizona for the Castrol GTX Fall Nationals. The semifinal round of Funny Car as Scott Coletta spins up the tires and is ready to go to war against Raymond Beadle.
And a tremendous amount of fuel being consumed in these cars. Nitromethane, it's called, at $24 a gallon. They will use a total of $300 worth of fuel from the time they start that car for the burnout till they shut it off at the other end. We mentioned alcohol before at $1.76 a gallon. Racing gasoline is $4.50 a gallon. But nitromethane, wow, that is liquid gold.
Of course, when you're talking the top classes of the sport of drag racing, funny car, top fuel, pro stock, you're talking extraordinarily expensive equipment tuned right to the edge. It's really expensive to run these machines.
And with nitro in the tank, they're among, in fact, they are the most violent of all racing cars. Our colleague Brock Yates refers to them as Formula Harry. Scott Coletta over in the far lane, inching forward. That top yellow light is a pre-stage. That'll just let him know he's in starting line proximity. Raymond Beadle following suit. Neither driver wanting to inconvenience the other. Starter buster couch between the cars. He'll make sure that that doesn't happen. They're off. Scott Coletta is ahead. Scott Coletta with the lead. He hazes the tires, loses traction, and that allows Raymond Beadle to come from behind. Beadle at 587, 241. Coletta, what a game try. His best day in funny car racing. A 599 at 242.
Well, really, Scott had him coming off the line. He moved first, really started to roll out. Beadle was on the charge playing catch-up, but look at the car in the far lane. You see that telltale wisp of blue smoke at the back of the car. It means the back wheels are spinning ever so slightly, but just enough to let the Beadle get ahead.
Well, Raymond Beadle had lane choice. He put Coletta over there, knowing that traditionally here at Firebird, that lane, as the day goes on, just is not quite as good as the right, and it proved to be the case here. But still, Scott made Raymond work for it.
Good little race there. 587, 241.
Yeah, the car still went out and shook a little bit. It was a little sluggish off the starting line, but like I said, we're still getting there. We're consistently, I wouldn't say the fast car, but
throughout the day.
But I mean, we're having a little bit of trouble with the fuel system. We keep juggling it, and we get closer, but I mean, we're still off.
Final round isn't bad, though.
No, we'll take it any way we can get it. And like I said, the Kodiak cars, we have been running pretty good, and we hadn't been hurting anything. That's the main thing, and at least we are in the final.
All right, good
Thank
luck.
you.
The second race in a row that Raymond Beadle has made it to the final round. He hopes to have better results here today. He was beaten by Ed McCullough at the Cheap Auto Parts Texas Nationals. All right, who is Raymond going to face in the final? Will it be the red Ford Thunderbird of Mark Oswald? Well, it could be, but I'll tell you what, Don the Snake Bedell may have something to say about that, because that will be Oswald's opponent. Mark Oswald, the #1 qualifier, and so far has had things his way. There's the Snake, burnout completed.
Well, the question, I think, now is going to be one of who gets lane choice in each case. In this particular case, Mark Oswald has the near lane. That's the one that just provided a win for Raymond Beadle. The other lane, you saw the tires hazed. That could have been contributed to by the nature of the surface. So this will tell the tale. Which lane do you want? Which one will win?
Well, what happens, Paul, the lanes can be very equal in qualifying, even in first round. But the more rubber that is laid down, particularly on a very hot day with the sun beating down on the asphalt, that rubber in one lane or the other can start to ball up a bit. And it's almost like running on marbles. And that is the condition, to a certain degree, over in that far lane, where the snake is right now.
Of course, if there is a man who can read it, Don Prudhomme is certainly that man. Years and years of experience.
And when you get in a situation like this, they'll do that dry burnout. If they see the tires haze a little bit, oftentimes the driver will leave the starting line actually still holding the handbrake full on to try to keep those tires from smoking, to slow down the wheel speed a little bit, and then he'll gradually release that brake.
Semi-final round, funny car. The winner of this matchup will face Raymond Beadle in the finals. There is Mark Oswald, that bright red Thunderbird, inches his way up to the line. On the far side, Don Prudhomme. The crew walks away. They are both alone now. Concentration on the Christmas tree. Now Don Prudhomme begins to inch his way forward and pulls into the lights. Both cars now moving to final position. They are both ready to go. Concentration on the tree. Light goes green, and look at Oswald. He absolutely nails it all the way to the finish line. It's Mark Oswald with a winning 5:55, 263 miles an hour. Don Prudhomme with a 6:30, 165 as he shuts her down.
Mark Oswald was like a bullet off the starting line. The most impressive run of the day, to be sure. So, in the final round, it's going to be Mark Oswald with lane choice over Raymond Beadle. Beadle is not going to like that news. And I don't have to tell anybody where Mark Oswald wants to be.
Well, Steve, here's the man that will face Raymond Beadle in the final round. Mark Oswald, a 5:55, 263 as the snake shuts down against you.
Yeah, we're happy with that. We just like to see the Motorcraft Thunderbird in the final. You know, Raymond's a good friend, and I'm sure he'll give us a hell of a race.
He's been having a little bit of problem almost every run. Your day by comparison.
Yeah, you know, our car's been nice and steady and quite a bit quicker, but his car is just fast enough, and, you know, he's going to put pressure on us not to make any mistakes.
All right, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Mark Oswald, Raymond Beadle, final round. Steve?
Well, I'll tell you, that boy Oswald is no prima donna driver. He'll be under that car, all over that car. He's a fine mechanic, as is the crew that has prepared this car for the next round of Top Alcohol Dragsters. That is the Eldon P. Slick Mount. They're just about ready. Stay with us.
We're back at the Castrol GTX Fall Nationals from Firebird Raceway in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm Paul Page with Steve Evans, and we're ready for Top Alcohol Dragster. Denny Lucas sits in the cockpit, contemplating his confrontation to come with Alan Johnson.
And you know, Paul, the alcohol dragsters don't pound the ground and make the thunder that the nitro fuel cars do. But I really love the sound of these machines. Next time you go to an NHRA championship drag race, sit down towards the end of the bleachers and listen to the alcohol cars come towards you. Cars like Alan Johnson, because without all the exhaust noise, you can actually hear the whine of the supercharger. You can hear the gears being changed. It's just a different sound, but it's like music almost.
These cars face an interesting problem now, Steve. The temperatures have gone above 90 degrees, 93 degrees right now. Now, these are alcohol-fueled cars. They use the alcohol to cool the engine down, so they want to put plenty of fuel into the engine. But when it gets hot like this, they have a question. Do they have to lean the engine out? And if they do that, are they giving up power and are they endangering the engine?
Well, that's a decision that each crew chief has to make on his or her own. One thing with these cars, it's not like a nitro car. You say, well, just instead of running 90% nitro, we'll run 99%. Or we'll drive the blower a little harder or advance the ignition timing. But with these cars, everything that can be done was done before it ever came out of the trailer. They are running at maximum all the time. And a little bit of tuning on the fuel system, as you mentioned, that's about all the leeway they have here. That and real good driving.
One thing that the category has is driving. Because they're using the engines that they are, they need just a little bit more help from the gearbox. So now we're running, rather than a top fuel dragster with 2 speeds, we're running a 3-speed transmission on these cars, and they need that to get all the way down the quarter mile.
It is Denny Lucas away first. Denny Lucas has 0.05 of a second in the bank off the starting line, and there you see that differential. A full car length, a 640. Nice number for Denny Lucas. 400s behind is Alan Johnson at 644. Both again run 213 miles per hour.
So who will face Denny Lucas in the final round? Will it be this man, Eldon P. Slick, as he brings his top alcohol dragster forward and does that classic burnout with a great deal of verve and power? Or will it be Bruce McDowell in his streamliner?
Well, Paul, Bruce McDowell has lane choice. He's in the near lane. But I doubt that that's going to be a factor here. This track seems more than capable of handling the kind of horsepower alcohol cars generate. Let's check in with Denny Lucas, see how he feels about the situation.
Denny, you came out nice and hard there.
Well, it's still doing what we want it to. Just one more time.
You climbed out. You said, I hope I didn't hurt it.
Well, we're just, you know, we're running it a lot leaner than I like to. And I mean, it just kind of worries you. You know, we got one more pass and no spare motor with us this weekend, so it's, you know, we kind of have to work on our stuff real gingerly.
One to go, as you say.
One to go,
right.
Thank you very much.
Well, they're running it as lean as they can because that's when they make the most horsepower. But if you cross over the line, instead of an engine, you've got a bomb behind you. Well, here's the streamlined car of Bruce McDowell. A lot of teams in the last few months have abandoned this kind of concept, feeling that the windshield and the nose piece and all just way too much. That, in fact, it outweighs any aerodynamic advantages those pieces may have.
Of course, all of racing is compromise. Finding out what you can add that will help you aerodynamically, but if you go too far, then, as you just suggested, it's too much weight. It doesn't work out there. The real job of the designers and the crew chiefs is to figure out what works without working so much else into the equation.
Well, Eldon P. Slick looks over at Bruce McDowell as if to say, are you ready? McDowell says yes. He signals that by moving forward. The small little front wheels, those are actually airplane wheels, a nose gear off of a small airplane. The more conventional front wheels on the far side with the solid tires, there's no pneumatic tube inside, and that keeps the tire on the wheel. Here we go. The final race in the semifinals of Alcohol Dragster. Neither driver moving in. Finally, McDowell does, followed by Slick, and it's Eldon P. Slick away first. Eldon gets close to the center line, almost crossed it. Bruce McDowell will go into the final round. Oh, boy. And he'll go in with lane choice by a mile. 635, 216 miles per hour. He is the muscle now. Those numbers prove it. Bruce McDowell, what a win over Eldon Slick. McDowell making some big noise in the desert today. His 635 establishes him as a big favorite over Denny Lucas, and those are the two drivers vying for the Winston World Championship. Well, speaking of favorites, David Nickens has arrived in the competition eliminator staging lanes, and as always, they'll make a final check of the air pressure in those rear slicks. A pound difference tire to tire can get you in big trouble. Well, here's a man with very few problems. Bruce McDowell looks strong in the alcohol ranks.
Bruce, 635, 217 puts you into the finals.
That's great in this heat. That's probably low for today of all the dragsters.
Looks like you picked up an advantage there, though, in shaking tires on the other side.
Car left real hard that pass, and we put a new set of tires on it the last pass, and I don't think they quite seated right. And this pass they seated.
All right, good luck.
Thank you.
Well, Paul, Bruce is absolutely right. You can tell him he is the quickest of all the alcohol dragsters this weekend. Stay with us. We've got a lot to come. The engine in Mark Oswald's funny car has been completely disassembled. The crew checking everything, including the rod and the main bearings underneath. It'll be back together, you can bet on that, for the funny car final against Raymond Beadle. That'll be coming up soon, but right now, we have got the semifinals of Competition Eliminator. And the first race will pit the V8 dragster of Ron Neff from Colorado against the Californian John Johnson, his 6-cylinder dragster. Well, earlier, Paul Page had a chance to do a little wandering around here, and he found something pretty interesting.
You know, one of the great things at any NHRA Nationals event is the manufacturer's midway. It's really unique to NHRA drag racing. You, of course, can get your souvenirs like you can at about any track. But beyond the T-shirts and things, you also get a very important product, information. All of the manufacturers involved in drag racing have different displays where they have not only what they're selling today, but what the future might bring to all of us. And of course, what they're doing out on the drag strip ends up on the passenger car of the future. For example, here's the Castrol booth. Now, if you want to know something about lubricants or about their brake fluids, anything, all the information you might want is right here, and technical experts to help you with that. Additionally, they're auctioning off a car this weekend. That is being done for charity. So when you come to one of these events, when it's quiet over on the strip, come on over to the manufacturer's midway. You'll have a good time and get some great information. Steve?
Well, here's a guy I'm sure made a pass through the manufacturers midway during qualifying to pick up all the hot tips for his economy dragster, Ron Neff. Now, he's from Colorado, and they race a lot, the Colorado racers here at Phoenix. So they know the racetrack, they know the weather conditions. Now, that's a V8 car. Opposite him in the far lane, that's a 6-cylinder car. But by now, you know the great equalizer is the electronic Christmas tree.
Well, and this is really the run that we didn't get to see, because in this particular situation, John Johnson and that little Nissan 6-cylinder got there by a bye run. You see, he leaves plenty early.
And leaving too early against his own light was Neff. Neff is red-lighted in the near lane. He is out of it. The winner is John Johnson. Now, that's a couple of freebies. Now, he may not know, though, he's got no rear-view mirrors on that dragster, that there was a red light on his opponent's lane. But he certainly knows he crossed the finish line first at 9:07, 143 miles per hour. Now, watch the tree in the far lane, and you can see what a nice light right there Johnston cut. Now, watch the tree in the near lane and the front wheels of the car in the near lane. And you can see Ron Neff got the car in motion just a little bit too soon. A foul start. So Johnson having a mighty lucky day, but he's got the performance to go with it. Now it may be David Nickens, Olds-bodied Alden facing him in the final, or it could be an all-dragster affair with Tim Cole. Right now, let's check in with Johnston and Paul Page at the far end.
John Johnson, the little 6-cylinder Nissan, still humping away. Red light on the other side, though. You're a 9:07 with a 143.
Well, it's staying right where it was, you know, all day long. It just keeps plugging out the same number. I wish it would pick up. I need some in the final.
On into the final round, though.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, let's find out who you're going to be against. Steve?
Okay, Paul, we'll know in just a few minutes. David Nickens, a former world champion. He knows how this game is played better than just about anybody. His competition is Tim Cole. Now, he has not been as close to his index as Nickens has been to his. So let's see what happens here. It is Nickens leading first. A good light by Nickens, and another red light. This time it belongs to Tim Cole. Nickens right now has no idea he's won. He probably thinks the dragster won. But he'll know as soon as he gets his time slip. He'll have a big billy on it. 890, 152 miles per hour for David Nickens. He goes into the final round against an unlikely opponent, a little 6-cylinder junkyard dog dragster. Let me tell you, there's nothing junk about that car in the far lane. Let's take a look again, and you'll see the foul start in the near lane. What a great job Nickens did. He's on his way. He's concentrating on his own lane, but unbeknownst to him, Cole has red lighted. So against the backdrop of Seguro Cactus, let's take a look at the competition eliminator final. David Nickens has lane choice over John Johnston. A nice contrast of vehicles. Paul Page?
Well, Tim Cole draws the red light. David Nickens in an 890 152.
We're just real proud to be here. I'll tell you, we've had a real tough day. The Castrol GTX motor oil car has been running real good, and the toughest is yet to come.
Going to come up against John Johnson now.
Yeah, John's real tough. I'll tell you what, he's been doing a real good job, and we've been doing a real good job. It's going to be a real good final.
Is the temperature cooling down enough it's going to make it a nice run?
It's going to be a real good run. I'll tell you what, he's doing a good job, but we're right there.
All right, the final round coming up then. John Johnson will take on David Nickens.
We're down to finals in all three of our categories, and here's a team that's got a lot of work to do. Not only do they need more performance for Raymond Beadle to defeat Mark Oswald, they've also got to find just the right balance of clutch and power to get down that tricky far lane. We'll be back for the final runs right after this.
We're back at Firebird Raceway in Phoenix for the Castrol GTX Fall Nationals. I'm Paul Page with Steve Evans, and the sun has now begun to set over the peak of South Mountain. The temperatures have begun to cool, and that will make a world of difference in performance as we're ready for the final round of Competition Eliminator. In the near lane, it's the big V8 Oldsmobile of David Nickens as he's prepared to take on that little 6-cylinder inline Nissan in the dragster of John Johnston.
Well, you'll recall in the previous round, David Nickens raced the dragster and he got to lead first. Not this time. That little 6-cylinder car will have quite a distinctive handicap advantage off the starting line. It's Nickens that'll have to be patient and just run his own race, Paul.
John Johnson has had incredible luck getting here. In both the quarterfinal and the semifinals, he really didn't have to race. His first opponent broke on the line, and in the semis, Ron Neff fouled out. They're both ready.
They are indeed ready. The RPMs go to the moon. The Dragster leads first by 0.2 of a second. Both of them cut a nice light. Can Nickens pass the Dragster? He pulls up even. He inches ahead, and yes, David Nickens wins his third NHRA National Championship race of the season. An 8.89, 152 miles per hour, a 9.12, 141 miles an hour for John Johnston, who fought a good fight with the Junkyard Dog. Let's look at it one more time, and there you can see the lights coming down. The Dragster reacts, Nickens reacts, and they both did it as experienced drivers will in this category, neither paying any attention to the other side of that tree. The Dragster right now has got to be feeling pretty good about things. He can't see anything off to his right, but all of a sudden he can hear something off to his right as here comes that big Oldsmobile. Now he can see him, and a round win. David Nickens. What a fine job he did all day. Nickens wins the competition eliminator title at the Castrol GTX Fall Nationals. Paul Page is with him at the far end of the racetrack. He's got to be a happy guy.
Dave, round here, superlative run, 889, 152, but he got an awful good light on.
Oh, he did. He left real good. We had a little performance advantage on him, and he knew he had to go for it. And, we're just proud to be here. This has been a real good race for us. We've been in the last two finals, and we just needed this win real bad. We're real happy for the crew. All my guys have done such a job this weekend, and we started this race out real good. The Castrol GTX guys sponsored this race, and we're real happy for them, along with Oldsmobile.
And the points here and there will give him a good shot at the Winston World Championship and Competition Eliminator. Listen to the throaty roar of that supercharged 500 cubic inch Hemi engine for Bruce McDowell. McDowell enjoys a performance advantage, as David Nickens did here in the final of Top Alcohol Dragster, and what an aggressive burnout. McDowell is serious. Let's again go to Paul with John Johnston.
John, boy, you gave it everything you had.
I gave it all I could.
Little Nissan couldn't get the job done at the end. What was the problem?
Just a little lack of horsepower. I mean, towards the end of the day, it started leaning out, and I didn't catch on to it, and it showed it. And I should have stepped onto it a little sooner and maybe fattened it.
Still, you look great. You left good.
Well, thank you. We work hard at it, and I want to congratulate David and his win. And it was fun being here at the Castrol GTX Fall Nationals.
Well, you made it a fun day for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, fun is the key word in the sportsman categories of NHRA Championship drag racing. Denny Lucas over the other side, you know he saw that smoky burnout of Bruce McDowell's in mind. Goodness, this man wants to beat me pretty bad. Lucas has got a shot. You can bet on it. And you know, Paul, usually when the temperature cools off, as it has in the last hour or so, a bad lane or a marginal lane can come back.
Well, not only that, Steve, but as the temperature drops, the engines and their ability to perform change drastically. They're making more horsepower now, a little cooler, a little denser air. It is very important that the crews react to that particular fact, as well as the stickiness of the strip itself. So a lot of changes. When we're talking changes here, we're also talking a whale of a lot of guesswork.
And right now, Denny Lucas is doing one thing, psyching himself up. Don't make a mistake. Don't make a mistake. He made the dry burnout that we saw earlier with the funny cars. Not all the alcohol dragsters do that. What he was doing there more than anything else was getting more heat in the clutch, to where the clutch is going to react very quickly when he stomps on that throttle.
A little bit of what we were talking about as well. Let's do the dry burnout. Let's find out how it will grab, if it's grabbing too hard, if it's slipping a little bit. Just what does this pad have in store for us when we're ready to launch?
All right, the visors have been snapped down. Lucas kind of wraps his head on the roll bar to get his own attention. The wheels moving up into the beams. The final in Top Alcohol Dragster is just moments away, and it has all the earmarks of being a beauty. McDowell in the near lane. He had lane choice. He's the quickest car in the category. Lucas is ready. McDowell is ready, and it's a grand start by both drivers. Front wheels side by side. Who's it gonna be? Bruce McDowell. 633, 217 miles per hour. That is his first big win this season. Denny Lucas, well, he's got nothing to be ashamed of. A 641 at 214 miles per hour.
Well, neither driver has anything to be ashamed of here. This was a great start. Both drivers coming off the line nice and even. McDowell just figured the strip a little bit better and got by at the finish.
I guarantee you, neither of these drivers took a breath from the time they left that starting line, maybe from the time they started their burnout. Right now, all you can just do is hope and pray you get there first. McDowell did just that.
Here he is as he takes the helmet off. Bruce McDowell, our latest champion, top alcohol dragster here at the Fall Nationals, a 6:33.217. Nice hole shot, too.
That's the nicest number we've been looking for all weekend.
You finally found her.
Well, it cooled down, and everything worked out just right, and then my crew worked real hard, and we made it.
It pays off in the long run.
Thank you.
All right, Bruce McDowell, congratulations.
Well, Bruce looks to be maybe in a little bit of shock. It still hasn't set in that he is the champion. Well, in the lengthening shadows here in Phoenix, Mark Oswald Funny Car sits poised and ready for the final rounds.
We're back at Firebird Raceway. The burnouts are complete, and we're ready for the final run in Funny Car. Paul Page with Steve Evans, and we're here at the Castrol GTX Fall Nationals. NHRA drag racing as Raymond Beadle, with flames throwing out of the pipes, is ready to run against Mark Oswald.
Now, those flames have been there all day, Paul. You just couldn't see them until the sun started to set. Now, you notice not as much flame out of the Candies and Hughes car. They've got that machine lean and mean. Now, Raymond Beadle, one of his best friends in the world is Paul Candies, that owns that Thunderbird Mark Oswald is driving. And there's a rumor that Beadle may retire from the cockpit at the end of this season. And with only this race and one more left, you'd know he'd like to sting his old pal Paul just one more time if he could.
Well, this certainly is the chance as we watch Raymond Beadle. Now drops that machine in reverse and brings it back to the line, ready to face Mark Oswald. And lane choice might be critical here. The right lane has been producing more wins.
It has indeed, Paul, but Beadle right now, I'm sure, is hoping not only has his crew chief, Ricky Johnson, Ronnie Woods, done a good job of balancing the power in the clutch, but also that maybe, as we mentioned, it's cooled off, and that far lane may be just as good as the near one. One thing I guarantee you, Beadle will not pussyfoot off the starting line. He will have the pedal to the metal.
Always, the crews are a key factor in preparation on the machine, but even more so in changing conditions like this as the air cools more and more to be able to read that strip and know what to expect.
Everyone is on their feet for the Funny Car Final. Both drivers are now staged and ready, and it's a dead even start. Raymond Beadle gets a little bit sideways. Mark Oswald dominates the last half of the track. It is Oswald. Oh, a very nice 5.53, 263 miles per hour. Raymond at a 5.97, 204. He obviously, judging by the speed, had to get off the pedal to maintain control of the automobile. Let's take a look again. Neither driver with an advantage off the mark. They were side by side, 16 rocket ships for exhaust pipes. But immediately, Oswald took the race in hand, moving out to almost a car length lead by the 1/8 of a mile and continuing to stretch it. Raymond Beadle became a spectator in that far lane, and you saw right there where he clicked it off. Oswald wins it. Paul's with him.
So Mark Oswald starts to work with the helmet now as he begins to savor that victory over Raymond Beadle. Mark Oswald, a 5.53, 263 as the Beadle shuts it down on the end there.
Yeah, we're real happy. I mean, we couldn't ask for a much better weekend for the Thunderbird. You know, from the first day we broke a blower belt, and from then on everything's just been, smooth as glass, and we're just happy to put the motorcraft.
That's the kind of weekend you want to cruise through, isn't it?
Oh yeah, exactly. And with Glidden, winning too, we like to put the motorcraft team in the winner's circle, definitely.
So Mark Oswald wins in Funny Car at the Fall Nationals.
Thank you.
Our congratulations to Mark Oswald as well. He's the Funny Car champion. Top alcohol dragster, well, that belonged all day to Bruce McDowell. Competition Eliminator winner, David Nickens. I'm Steve Evans for Paul Page. Thanks for joining us from Phoenix.
The executive producer of American Sports Cavalcade is Harvey M. Balish. The supervising producer is John B. Mullen. Produced and directed by Mark Kuchin. Promotional consideration provided for and a fee paid by the Style Auto World Championship Team, the nation's premier source of fast lane fashions. Style Auto, the champion's choice for the style of your life. The American Sports Cavalcade is a
and 5 seconds short.